Check out what I found out about slavery. Y'all ain't gonna believe this. It's an article written by Joseph E. Holloway, and it is good. Let's get into it. The majority of black slave owners were members of the mulatto class, and in some cases were the sons and daughters of white slave masters. Yeah, many of the mulatto slave owners separated themselves from the masses of black people and attempted to establish a caste system based on color, wealth, and free status. This is where the whole little dark skin versus light skin thing came about. Check this out. According to Martin Delaney, the colored community of Charleston City clung to the assumptions of the superiority of white blood and brown skin complexion. These mulattoes of the old free black elite did not attend church with the dark-skinned blacks of Charleston City. They not only formed congregations which excluded freedmen of dark complexion, but they only married among other mulattoes to keep the color in the family. Large numbers of free blacks owned black slaves in numbers disproportionate to their representation in society. Yeah, they were black slave owners. According to the federal census of 1830, free blacks owned more than 10,000 slaves in Louisiana, Maryland, South Carolina, and Virginia. The majority of black slave owners lived in Louisiana and planted sugar cane. Slave holding among the mulatto class in South Carolina was widespread according to the first census of 1790, which revealed that 36 out of 102, or 35% of free black heads of family held slaves in Charleston City. By 1800, 1 out of every 3 free black recorded owning slave property. Between 1820 and 1840, the percentage of slave-holding heads of family ranged from 72 to 77%. However, by 1850, the percentage fell to 42%. We're gonna get into why. Check this out. There's more. Oh, it's more. According to the U.S. Census report in 1860, only a small minority of whites owned slaves. Out of a population of 27 million whites, only 8 million lived in the South, and out of this population, fewer than 385,000 owned slaves. In short, the total white population owned about 1.4, while the southern white population owned about 4.8 enslaved Africans. On the other hand, the black population in 1860 was 4.5 million, about 500,000 living in the South. Of the blacks in the South, 261,988 were not slaves. Of this number, 10,689 lived in New Orleans. In New Orleans, over 3,000 free blacks owned slaves. Keep listening. In 1860, there were at least 6 African Americans in Louisiana who owned 65 or more slaves. The largest number, 152 slaves, were owned by the widow C. Richards and her son P.C. Richards, who owned a large sugarcane plantation. Another black slave magnate in Louisiana with over 100 slaves was Antoine Dubliget, a sugar planter whose estate was valued at $264,000. And you know, back then, that's in North Carolina, 69 free blacks were slave owners. The majority of urban black slave owners were women. In 1820, free black women represented 68% of heads of household in the North and 70% of slaveholding heads of colored household in the South. The large percentage of black women slave owners is explained by manumission by their white fathers or inheritance from their white fathers or husbands. Black women were the majority of slaves emancipated by white slave-owning men with whom they had sexual relations. Oh my God. 23% of all the recorded colonial manumissions were mulatto children, and 75% of all manumissions were females. Oh, this is where it gets good. Euro-Americans arrived in Jamestown, Virginia in 1607. The first large group of Africans arrived in 1619. Listen to this. However, House of Burgess, or Burgess, however you say it, records show that Africans were already in the colony before 1619. Oh my God. John Rolfe provides us with an eyewitness account of this first group. About the last of August in 1619 came a Dutch man of war that sold us 20 Negroes. See how they spell it? Among them was one called Antonio from Angola. Later we found out that Antonio becomes Anthony Johnson, who becomes a slave owner. Other listed was Angelo, a Negro woman, and John Pedro, a Negro aged 30. The census of 1624 and 25 showed that there were 23 Africans living in Jamestown listed as servants, not slaves. Africans coming to Jamestown between 1630 and 1640 could expect to be freed after serving their indented period of time between 7 to 10 years for Africans and Indians. This time, there was no system of perpetual servitude or slave for life, but the system was rapidly evolving. Slavery wasn't even a factor. It wasn't even called slavery yet, but we're gonna get to when it happened. Between 1640 and 1660, slavery was becoming a customary reality. This is where slavery changed. This is where everything changed. In 1640, 3 servants of Hugh Gwynn, a Dutchman called Victor, a Scotchman called James Gregory, and John Punch, a black man, having run away from their master, were overtaken in Maryland and brought back to stand trial for their misbehavior. The verdict of the court would change the system of indentured servitude and set the system in transition to plantation slavery. This is where plantation slavery came about. Listen. The court ruled that the 3 servants shall receive punishment by whipping and having 30 stripes apiece. The court ordered the 2 white men, watch this, should first serve out their times with their master according to their indentures, and 1 whole year apiece after the time of their service is expired, and that they shall serve the colony for 3 years. But the black man shall serve his master or his assigns for the time of his natural life. This marks the first time that race and color became a factor in the status of both black and white indentured servants. In other words, the system is rapidly evolving to meet the new demand for cheap labor, and race is slowly being used as the justification for the enslavement of peoples of African origins. Between 1640 and 1660, Africans were going to court and suing for their freedom. In 1649, there were about 300 Africans in the colony and an increasing mulatto population. African and European indentured servants' offsprings were increasing and considered alarming in regardless to the status of the mulatto. That the system was evolving based on being either black or white. Black or white didn't even matter to 1649, and that was just to establish a difference in class. Oh my God. Africans who entered Jamestown between 1620 to 1650 could expect to be freed after serving their indented time and given 50 to 250 acres of land, hogs, cows, and seeds, and the right to import both black and white indentured servants. For a brief period in American history, between 1630 to 1670, a number of Africans had become freedmen and owned indented white servants. The Act of 1670 forbid free Negroes to own Christian servants, but conceded the right to own servants of their own race. Oh my God. By 1670, it was becoming customary to hold African servants as slaves for life, and by 1681, what was customary became law. Oh my God. The first laws regarding the status of Africans recognized the free blacks. The first status was passed in 1662, provided that the status of offspring should follow the status of the mother. Y'all see where it's going? Watch this. What this law did was to allow white fathers to enslave their own children and free women of color to perpetuate the free black population. They've been using y'all for years, black women. In other words, it also guaranteed free black females the right to extend their free status to their children. Boy, don't that sound like Section 8 and food stamps. Oh. Black women who have served their indentured period would not provide foundation for the free black community. Many of those Africans who were grandfathered in the new system not only became the free black community, but this is the origins of black slave owners. The Act of 1668, dealing with the condition of the colored population, related solely to the tax obligations of a free black woman. And 2 years later, an act guaranteed to Negroes manumitted or otherwise free the right to own servants of their own race, and expressly denied them the right to purchase or own white or Christian servants. This law recognized and sanctioned slavery, but also guaranteed the continuity of the free black class who are now largely mulatto. So who is running this shit? So it sounds like it's black people that's keeping black people down. So there's a class out there this whole time who's been operating behind the scenes, separating themselves from the black class. Y'all hit that like button, leave a comment, tell me what y'all think.